There is no off-season for peak performers. If you're an athlete, an elite athlete, if you're a premier athlete, if you're a peak performer, there is no off-season. It does not exist. If you want to be on your A game, there is no such thing as off-season time. Let me tell you a little story. It's a story about two teenage basketball players whom I consider as peak performers, elite athletes. So here's the conversation in the car. In the car, after a disappointing end of the season, very close 3-point loss in a basketball game, these two teenage elite athletes, premier performers, peak performers, what would you expect them to be saying? Here was the conversation. The conversation was about preparing for the next season, about preparing for the next game. I mean, every college coach I know, every high school coach I know, every professional coach that I know would pay a lot of money to hire, to train, to have these two elite performers on their team. Why? Because here's what you might expect to see after a very close 3-point loss, heart-wrenching, to their rival. You would expect to hear some complaints about officiating, of course, a poor call by the coach, or whining and moaning about unfair play, or we weren't ready, or whining and moaning about a missed shot, or you might expect to hear some complaining about another teammate who didn't perform up to expectations. But no, none of that. The entire conversation on the ride home about 8 or 9 o'clock at night was about processing their performance during the season, their performance during that game, and getting ready for the next game, the next season. That's what peak performers do. That's what premier athletes do. There is no such thing as an off season. Maybe a planned rest day, maybe a planned rest period, 1 or 2 days, but there is no such thing as an off season. So there's another part to this story too. Let me continue. The next morning, one of these peak performers wanted to be at high school for an open gym at 5 a.m. in the morning. So we're arriving home 8 or 9 o'clock at night. This peak performer is out of bed by 4:30 in the morning. We're in the car at 5. Open gym is 5:30 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. and then a full day of school. And that evening, he finished his day at 9 o'clock in the church youth group. Now that's what a peak performer does. There is no such thing as an off season. They're planning for the next season. They want to always be on their A game. If you're a peak performer, you're not part-time, you're full-time. Now, why do I bother telling you this? Because at the end of the day, if you want to be a peak performer, at the end of the day, everyone will say either, I wish I had, or I'm glad I did. When that day comes, what will you say?